Hi, my name is Aviva Rosenberg. I'm 50 years old. I just turned 50 on September 3rd of this year. I'm now Ned. And back in 2019, I was diagnosed very suddenly with uterine leiomyosarcoma. I was stage 1B. I had a single fibroid in my uterine wall. It was a fibroid that had been tracked actually for 2 years, and I was told chances of it being cancer really infinitesimal. Almost even had a procedure that probably would have killed me. And for some reason, my gut said, don't do it. A few months later, I got quite sick, wound up in the ER, and this fibroid was now about 12 or 13 centimeters. So I had a hysterectomy 2 days later, and a week later, those pathology results came back, and it said I had uterine leiomyosarcoma, which was absolutely devastating. I was 47 years old, 2 children, recently divorced, and really on my own. Sought out the best physicians, got multiple opinions. Everyone said, have your ovaries removed. So I went back for a second surgery 5 weeks later. The ovaries were clear. And after that, I was considered Ned. I was told to go live my life and just come in for scans every 3 months, which I did. I hauled myself down to Sloan Kettering every 3 months for scans. And then this last October of 2021, on that scan, they detected metastases in my left lung. Funny, I wasn't devastated because I expected it. I was told it would come back 2 years later. Pretty much it does in many cases. There's no cure for this cancer, and that the life expectancy 5 years out is pretty infinitesimal. So it was pretty bleak. So I kept going for those scans every 2 months now, watching these metastases grow. Was unhappy with the care I was receiving. I insisted on getting a consult for surgery. I was told by my physician I was going to be inoperable, which I refused to believe. I sought out my own consults and wound up changing institutions, found a wonderful surgeon who did operate on my lung this past July, removed those metastases, and I have since also done prior to and post-surgery circulating tumor DNA tests, and I am Ned. I don't have cancer. And I don't chalk it up to just having surgery. I've done an immense amount since February, when I really took matters into my own hands to research and understand what really is driving cancer. And I work in the cancer field. I've spent my career in genomics. I've spent the last 10 or so focused in oncology, working for all these various providers that provide all these different types of targeted testing. And unfortunately, the cancer type I have, targeted therapy, immunotherapy, there is none. You're essentially told surgery, chemo, and radiation. And I absolutely refuse to have any chemo because I have helped countless people over the years and seen what chemo has done to them. And sad to say, I don't know many people who lived quite long after really running their bodies down with chemo. So I opted post-surgery. I refused chemo. One of the reasons I changed doctors was my doctor simply refused to hear anything about anything alternative that I wanted to do. And she really wanted me to do this, watch and wait and go on chemo. And there's absolutely no data that this chemo would work in this cancer. Sarcomas are chemo resistant. And I read the papers. There was no data. And even I had a doctor tell me that I made the right choice after I'd switched, that, chemo can kill you, essentially. You're not healing yourself. You're just trying to attack cancer in a way that's never going to cure you. So I took my own leap of faith and started researching on the internet. And I came upon, in February, Dr. Nasha Winters. And I was really blown away because I had obviously worked in cancer all these years. Not only did I know nothing about the cancer type that I had, which obviously in the last 2 years I've learned a lot about, but I knew nothing about the metabolic approach to cancer and what really was driving cancer. So if I knew nothing, working in science for my entire career, working in genomics, working in oncology, how does the average person know anything about what is out there, how you could heal yourself? So I read various books, including Dr. Nasha Winter's, and it was in February after my scan appointment where the metastasis was still growing that I decided I was going to try the ketogenic diet. I did work with Remission Nutrition to help guide me through that. I did find it incredibly difficult, and ultimately keto did not work for me, mostly because I had trouble absorbing the fats, and I probably converted over and also detoxed way too fast. So I'm not on a strict keto diet anymore. But I have learned an immense amount through various people out there. I read Jane McClellan's book, and I was on the Care Oncology drugs as well for a while. I opted to stop those recently because I have concerns over taking prescriptions, and particularly statins, because I do believe you need the cholesterol for healthy brain. So I've been navigating, and after reading Dr. Nasha Winter's book, I did look up the various providers, and I found a clinic in Ohio called Options Naturopathic, which has really helped me and held my hand since February. I get regular blood work. We did all sorts of testing, not just genomic testing, nutrition testing, but toxicity testing. It just, there's so much out there to learn about your body and what it needs and what it can't process, and beyond diet, just sleep. I completely radically changed my sleep schedule. I now get the 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. When I was first diagnosed, I took a meditation course, an MBSR course, and I was pretty good at it. And then I kind of fell out of it. Now I am back to meditating. And I have someone who works with me for free every week to make sure that I stay on track. So it is lifestyle changes. I was a very healthy person. I ran half marathons, and I actually had just run a half marathon just a couple weeks before I got diagnosed. I mean, this is what was so shocking. I had people telling me, you were like the picture of health. You eat so well. You're fit. You work out. I was swimming long distance and running and cycling and going to boot camp. And I had done everything I thought. I was very aware growing up of cancer. There was some cancer in the family, nothing hereditary. In fact, I had absolutely no what they call risk factors for the cancer that I had. It came out of the blue, I was told. It's just a rare event and a random event. And the reality is it's not a random event. And physicians telling you that it's random and that there's nothing you can do is really wrong. I don't know how you can practice as a physician and not be open and aware to this so many different modalities that could be personalized and help a patient heal themselves. So, I mean, as a cancer patient, I had always known that you had to take matters and advocate for yourself. And I knew that from working in the industry, from seeing other people with cancer, just on the genomic front. So many physicians weren't even testing patients for, inherited, factors potentially, or for helping them find targeted treatments. And if you're an average individual who doesn't know these things exist, you don't know what to ask your doctor. So I wasn't coming from a place of ignorance. I at least had a base. But I knew I had to advocate that the only way to survive something that's a rare cancer that, I think 6 in a million women a year get, maybe 1,200 women a year get. There's no research. There's very little research in this. I was going to the top doctor, and there's not much research. It's just some chemo studies. And, I read all the papers, and I knew it was life or death. If I left my life in the hands of conventional medicine, I would be dead today. I would not be alive. And I want to live. I have two fantastic kids who are 19 and 16, and I want to live a long life. I want to be a grandmother, or not. No pressure on the kids, but I'm too young. I'm 50. I'm in the prime of my life. And to tell me that I'm going to die is wrong. And the sad part is no doctor tells you you're going to die. Mine didn't say I was going to die. They just tell you there's no cure. And then you go read the stats and you're left with good luck to you, essentially. So, there's a whole world out there for people to heal themselves, and I have been working like mad. Whether it's taking 20 supplements a day or looking at my diet, my nutrition, my exercise, what type of exercise, my meditation, making sure that you're with friends and family and socializing and getting support and not being alone and not carrying stress and working on your emotional burdens, right? All of that. It's all of it. And I understand now there's not one thing that's going to cure me. It's just working on all of it together. And I don't need to know what cures me. I just need to stay cancer-free. And I fully believe that I'm going to live a long life. I am taking care of myself in ways that I didn't even know existed. And I sure hope that a film like this and everyone else who shares their story is going to bring hope and to others, just like others have done for me. So I want to tell you a little bit in more detail about the different modalities that I had tried. So back in February of 2021, when I discovered the metabolic approach to cancer, I read Keto for Cancer, I read Jane McClellan's book. I decided I was going to start out with a ketogenic diet, and I made a quick and radical change actually prior to even contacting Remission Nutrition. And I would highly advise that you get a nutritionist when making the transition. So I was tracking my ketones, my glucose using the Keto Mojo. I was tracking every calorie I was intaking using Chronometer to make sure that I had the right balance of fats, carbs, and protein. I am a really lightweight person here. I'm only about not even 100 pounds. I did lose a significant amount of weight on keto. I was probably 115 when I started, and now I am 95 pounds. I don't follow a strict keto diet anymore. I found it very difficult to handle the fat level. I have difficulty absorbing the fats, so it might work for some. I had to modify a more of a Mediterranean diet. I am trying to work on absorbing the fats better. I take lipase now to help with it, but I really eat, I would say, a Mediterranean, plant-based. I do eat fish. I do eat chicken. I really do not eat dairy. I knew I was lactose intolerant. I actually can digest it well, but it is inflammatory. So I stay away from dairy. I pretty much stay away from red meat also. It's incredibly rare that I eat a piece of red meat. And some of this guidance came back really after I had the nutrition genome test done to look at what types of things I could absorb. For instance, I found out I can't break down folic acid. So all that folic acid in manufactured foods, I actually wasn't getting much B vitamin, and I was pretty deficient on B vitamins. So now I do B12 injections, and I also take riboflavin. So there was a lot that came out in all that testing. So I stayed with keto for quite a while and have learned and modified along the way as I've learned my body. And we follow the blood work monthly that my naturopath does. I then added in around the May-June timeframe of this year, 2022, the Care Oncology protocol. So I was taking all 4 medications, the metformin, the doxycycline, the mebendazole, and atorvastatin. I stayed on it for 2 full months, even through my surgery. And I did see some of my lipoproteins drop on the atorvastatin. Wasn't seeing an effect necessarily on my insulin, glucose levels and such, but I got pretty nervous that I was overtaxing my liver. My liver enzymes really shot up, which was detected in a recent visit. So I have backed off, and I've decided to stop it. And for me as well, I do feel, after even speaking with a cardiologist, that taking statins, it's not great for your brain health, and I don't want to cause a secondary problem over the years. So I rather heal my body. The approach to blocking all the pathways, I put intense effort into. I mapped it out. I followed Jane McClellan's protocol. And I'm just taking that approach more on the supplement side. But really, I focus on the supplements to supplement my body with what it needs so that I'm not deficient and so that I'm absorbing my nutrients and then I'm getting the proper nutrient value. As well, other factors I've done, most of my life actually, I was doing acupuncture and yoga. So the meditation was the newest alternative healing modality that I had added, but I added that back in beginning of 2020. I walk regularly. I have a dog. I got a dog after I got cancer, and having a dog is great. It's not that I wasn't athletic. I was very athletic, but having the dog really brings a lot of love into the home. It's a stress reliever. She gets me out to play, and she's warm and loving. She's a beautiful golden retriever. So I'm walking with her and doing breath work while I walk, inhaling deeply, especially because the cancer went to my lung. I'm really focused on making sure that I'm releasing everything that's from the lung. I do something called heartfulness cleaning with a guide who works with me weekly to do imagery of clearing out any cancer that can be in my body. I also integrated this year infrared sauna to help me detox, because I learned I'm not really a great detoxer. I have to be really careful. Sarcomas are driven by toxins. I had toxicity testing. I was carrying various chemicals in my body, anywhere from dry cleaning chemicals to PFAS. There was a lot. It was shocking. And I'm very aware now that we can't get away from toxins in the environment, but we can limit them. So my air is filtered. I have very clean well water. I live outside, in the country basically. But I still filter my water, even though it's coming out of a nice clean well that's been tested. So I focus a lot on detox on a daily basis. Recently I'm doing a liver cleanse just to help with some additional detox, and making sure that anything that goes into my body is organic, as local as possible, grass-fed if it's, the eggs and the beef, no grains. I eat no more inflammatory oils. And I had a really healthy diet before, what I thought was healthy. What I learned was I was consuming a ton of sugar in my everyday diet, even though I was eating healthy. And I probably was not getting the nutrition that I needed in other areas, and being deficient in certain areas, having difficulty. I can't break down vitamin A, for instance, and I can't break down folic acid, and I was low on B vitamin. I didn't know these things. I'm a bad methylator. I hold on to toxins. So all the different testing that I did, whether it was nutrition genome or various tests through Rupa Labs that the naturopath ordered, I learned about my gut microbiome. It winds up that out of some of the keystone species, I really only have 2 that are active in my gut. And now we're working on rebuilding my gut. I had a lot of digestive issues, over decades. I was lactose intolerant and didn't eat dairy, but I still had digestive issues, never knew where they came from. So I've learned so much about the gut and the importance of healing your gut to improve your health. So many different modalities. So another area, so this has all taken so much research, it's like a full-time job. And thankfully I'm good at research and had the energy to do it. Some of this time that I was off, having cancer, I was employed, and other times of it I was not, and I used it to my advantage to research and take care of myself. I'm just going to go back to work in a week. I've been off for about 3 months because of the surgery and the recovery. I never want to have to repeat that again. It was as least invasive as it could have been. It was a robotic surgery. Still took me 3 months to recover. And I just don't want to ever go back through that again. So I'm going to keep working really hard. In terms of the cost of all of this, just this year, if I didn't have health insurance, just for the conventional treatments, which would have been visiting the doctor, the scans, and the surgeries, would have been well over $300,000. Thankfully, I do have insurance coverage, and so I've paid probably, my deductible of $6,000, and most of the other stuff has been covered. But when you add in all of my alternative care, my naturopathic visits, which is not covered by insurance, my supplements, my, acupuncture or yoga or going to the sauna, everything, any device, book, everything I need to buy and do to help me heal, I have spent over $20,000 in the last 12 months. And this is a major problem. I find it to really be abhorrent that naturopathy is not covered by major medical, or not all major medical insurance companies. I have a very large, well-known carrier, and none of this is covered. In fact, my robotic surgery, part of it, they did an exploratory bronchoscopy to look for, through my lung, to find other metastases. And because that modality is newer, that part of the procedure was initially denied. So insurance companies don't want to pay for these things. And it's stupid, to be honest, because you would actually save a lot of money and people wouldn't be so sick if you allowed them to heal themselves. Many other countries obviously use many other modalities. A couple other things I haven't mentioned, which I did try and I do periodically, is mistletoe and Helleborus. Especially inhaling the Helleborus for my lungs to help with inflammation. These types of things are covered in other countries. It's just part of medical care. Here, it's so unknown, and doctors don't know. Insurance companies certainly aren't covering it. It's a real problem. So if you're not financially stable, or you don't have the extra income to spend on this, you're at a true disadvantage. You literally need to be a wealthy person in this country to get the care that you need. You have to be smart, you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to have the cash to pay for it, or you have to do a GoFundMe. And, I'm doing well, but every extra penny I have, goes to this. And it's really not sustainable. And it's really unfair that someone who's sick has to not only deal with the health effects of feeling ill, or going through surgeries, or going through chemo or radiation and recovering, but then you have to worry about insurance companies, and you have to worry about the fact that if you want to try something else, it's not going to be covered. Where am I going to get the money from? And the system in this country needs to change. And I think the only way it's going to change is the education of more people understanding that they have options and demanding these options. Because, I have said before, I'm going to do what I have to do to live. If it means leaving this country to get the treatment that I need, I will leave this country to get the treatment that I need. I'm not going to sacrifice my life or have an insurance company tell me, or a doctor in conventional medicine tell me what I have to do. I'm going to do what I have to do to live. And unfortunately, I think that's the tactic patients in this country need to take. It's very expensive, and I hope over the years and decades that something will change here. We can't keep masking symptoms and just throwing drugs at patients. I can't even imagine if you're on chemo, now you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for those drugs, and they don't cure you necessarily. Maybe in some cancers they do, but in mine, they don't. there needs to be the options for patients. So I hope this information helps others, because, I think ultimately we just want to live and have long and happy lives, and do what we can to help others. So I wanted to talk about one other part of the cancer healing that I didn't talk about in my 2 other videos, and that is stress and emotional trauma. And for me, I'm 100% convinced that actually is what caused my cancer, and certainly the lack of other supports in my body. It just tipped it over the edge. So my life has been pretty eventful. I did suffer a childhood trauma that I thought I dealt with, but really thought I could get away from, and it really had carried with me into my adulthood, even leading to the various decisions I made into my adulthood. One of those was as I went off on my own after graduating college, moved across the country, basically leaving everything and to restart my life. And it was great. It changed my life in many, many positive ways, but I really was on my own, emotionally, financially. I wound up in a marriage of 17 years that ultimately wound up in divorce, because I wound up marrying someone who was not a partner, not an emotional support. And so for all those years, I carried immense stress, sort of the flight or flight survival mode stress, while working full time and traveling and raising a family, and trying to be, the best wife and mother. Fast forward to 2018, I'm in the prime of my life. I'm had become the chair of my school board. I was running these half marathons. I was doing fantastic at work. My kids were thriving. Ultimately, my marriage was not, and I made that choice that I needed to leave that marriage. And so in 2018, my divorce was finalized. But what happened subsequently in the last 4 years actually was incredibly traumatic, and it didn't take the 4 years for the signs to show. So basically, I divorced September of 2018, and I didn't have a home to live in, and I was displaced for 7 months. I lived with friends in 3 different places with my kids, moving, had to put my life in storage and just had to move. So, moving 3 times in 7 months within my town, it became unbearable. And eventually I was able to find a home, but it wasn't in my town. I had to move basically next door. And that was devastating to me because I had to resign from school board, which was something that meant so much to me and giving back to my community. So not only was I leaving community, I didn't have an opportunity to participate in that community because I was no longer a resident. So I moved next door, I got resettled, and that's when that fibroid started getting worse. I was having a lot more bleeding, it was getting heavier, it was getting annoying. I went back to the doctor, and she referred me for an interventional radiology procedure, which would have attempted to block the blood vessel flow and allowed that fibroid to die inside of me. I was approved for this procedure. They had called me to schedule it, and that's when, for some reason, my gut said, just don't do it. You finally moved into your house. You need some peace and quiet. Your symptoms actually aren't as bad as they were. Maybe you're getting better. And so I just let sleeping dogs lie. And it was just a few months later, that October, that sent me to the emergency room, where the fibroid had rapidly grown, and I was diagnosed with cancer. And as you can imagine, having not only first lost my primary home in the divorce and being divorced, and then being displaced for 7 months, finally buying a home, to then get the news that you had cancer was more than the straw that broke the camel's back. Utter devastation. And I thought I was going to be getting my life back on track. And now here I was with a devastating rare cancer that had no cure. and very little hope for survival. As the time progressed, I dealt with it. I tried to go to a therapist to talk about it. And I thought, just taking care of myself, maybe doing more yoga and doing some of those basic things I had always relied on, taking the meditation class, that was new. I thought, well, that's going to do it. I found a passionate new hobby. I learned to cut flowers, and spent a lot of my time gardening, even through the winter, growing plants from seed. I found it really rejuvenating. And I thought I was on the right track. They kept telling me that you had no cancer. And then it came back this last October, and I was really dumbfounded. I thought, wow, but I've been doing everything. How could the cancer possibly have come back? And I think it's because the emotional trauma side wasn't really dealt with. I had yet to find a therapist or a modality that could help me release that emotional trauma, and get me onto a true path of healing. Because in a way, some of the surface level, what I'll call surface level things, maybe it's, acupuncture or the sauna or massage or, sleep, it wasn't enough to really heal. I needed something more. And so luckily, through some other women that I know who had the same condition, one of them recommended me to a therapist that she had been seeing who sees cancer patients. And she's been wonderful, and hasn't been that long. It's only been a couple months, but I can really feel and sense some of the changes. And we've also doubled down on my naturopathic side in terms of the emotional healing and focusing on the heartfulness clearing and the meditations and the positive, thinking, and my breath work and how I respond to stressors in life. That is, I can feel the shift. I can feel there is a change. And I think that, along with everything else that I've been doing, I think that's why I now have no evidence of disease post-surgery. But I think if you don't treat the emotional side, it just still continues to fester. And one of the largest metastases I actually had was adjacent to my pericardium, which is, the lining of your heart. And I had tremendous heartache over years. And in a way, it's no surprise that the tumor was right next to my heart, because that's where I felt my pain. And, I've learned a lot too, that you can have a lot of joys and sadness at the same time in life, and that's okay. And, a perfect life doesn't mean everything has to be perfect, or you can't have suffered. A lot of these sufferings I've had obviously are here to teach me something. The cancer was there to tell me that you had work to do. And the fact that it came back, it was a signal to tell me that you're not done and you haven't quite yet addressed what is going on. So, diet and nutrition is one piece. It's not everything. Supplements and meditation, that's, one piece, not everything. I think it's the combination. And I am someone who suffered a lot of trauma. And I'm healing from it. I'm 50 years old, and I'm finally on the road to healing from it. And this is why I do believe the combination that I will live a long and happy life, like I was meant to be. So I had one more thing that actually wasn't on the question sheet that I wanted to bring up that is so important to a patient's healing. And obviously that's not just support from family and friends, but support from employers. So one of the additional traumatic events that I experienced as a cancer patient was after my first surgery. I had returned to work a month actually after having back-to-back surgeries. As primary supporter to my family, I was concerned. I wanted to make sure that they knew I, wanted to work and I was okay and I was coming back to work. About 3 months later, not even, I got a call one day and I was laid off from work. And I was discriminated against. Company was doing well. They were hiring. They had absolutely truly no cause, but in a at-will place of work, which is typical here in the United States, you can just be let go. Being who I am, I did not let it go. And subsequently, I wound up with a year off from work, which I used to work on recovery. But, this is the difficulty here in the US, is our health insurance is tied to our employment. And you need to have an employer who is supportive of patients when they're ill. And even companies with policies in place can at will make their own decisions and hope that their employees don't come after them. And this is rampant. And it's something that I thought was one-off, but it really is not one-off. So now you have cancer patients who not only have to worry about being laid off at work because they have cancer, but they can't go get other insurance. I can't go get long-term insurance without paying exorbitant rates. What if your company doesn't offer long-term disability and you need to be out? What if you've had your short and long-term disability, but those benefits ran out? Now what? It can very quickly snowball into a really devastating scenario, which could lead to bankruptcy. If you are not able to get yourself back to a place of employment and work and get back onto having healthcare insurance. I was on COBRA for a while I was off. It's incredibly expensive. So having support here, recognizing cancer patients are no different than other people who have an illness. Cancer is considered a disability. There are protections, but they're not good enough. The protections are not good enough to ensure that somebody does not lose their job when they have this diagnosis or when they're returning to work. Let's say they have been laid off, like I was. Finding a new job, having to worry about employers knowing or other people knowing about your cancer diagnosis and its impact on you being hired again. Is that person well enough? Even though there are policies in place, it doesn't mean that employers follow them. And there is a lot of discrimination out there in the world. Cancer patients, for some reason, are treated quite a bit differently than other medical diagnoses. And the reality is everyone and their brother knows somebody who has cancer. It's an illness that affects literally everyone in this country. So we need to reform not only how we access health insurance in this country, but ensure that the protections that are meant there to protect people with disabilities, including those with cancer, truly are utilized, and that in places of employment that don't follow these regulations are brought to justice for that. This is a silent epidemic of discrimination, and cancer patients have enough to worry about. They shouldn't have to worry about having an income and having health insurance.